asking you to accept. Thank you for that.
We're a small business education company committed to children.
So, Alex Addams, Executive Director of Elev8 Baltimore. And then Heather, you want to leave the introductions online?
Absolutely, thank you. My name is Heather May. I am the project manager at the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools. We are the coalition that sits under MOST, and we are trying to do all things community schools, professional development, networking like this, and partnership development. If you are on the computer and you'd like to introduce yourself, please feel free to just hop on now and say your name and anything else you'd like to share. You can also put it in the chat and I'll read it out.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dedra Lane. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Park Heights Renaissance. I'm happy to be here with you all this afternoon.
And actually, Heather, you can unspotlight me if you want. That way we can see everybody better until we do the presentation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Keyshawn Golson. I am from Morgan State University, also in the teacher education department under Seuss. And I am actually on my way in to be in person. It's just a little construction. So I will see you guys shortly.
Excellent.
Hi, my name is Laura Stein. I'm with the Julie Community Center in East Baltimore. We provide some after-school programming for our local schools in East and Southeast Baltimore.
Good afternoon, Van Brooks, Executive Director of Safe Alternative Foundation for Education.
Did we get everybody online?
Still have Marcetta Young, but she did introduce herself in the chat and she works for the ACE project.
Excellent. All right, great. I'm just like a really nice, diverse group of folks here today. We are going to run through a brief presentation, but the bulk of this meeting is really to have Alex share her wisdom as a very experienced lead agency for both community schools and out of school time here in Baltimore City. And for you to be able to pepper her with questions because I think that it is a very unique role to be a lead agency. So we're going to run a few slides, give you a little bit of background, and then we'll pass it over to Alex. So Heather, if you want to bring our slides up, and it looks like we've got maybe a couple people in waiting room. All right, so as we've mentioned, I'm the director of the Maryland Out of School Time Network. We also house the Maryland Coalition for Community Schools. So MOST has been around since 2007. We are one of the 50 statewide after school networks that are supported by the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. We're also the National After School Association affiliate for Maryland. We do advocacy and policy work. We do training and professional development. Everything's on our website. We also have a great newsletter that I highly recommend for both MOST and the Coalition for Community Schools. So in about 2016, we saw the momentum for community schools growing in Maryland. There was already so much happening in Baltimore where there was an aligned strategy between after school and community schools. And so at that time, we thought this might be a good time for us to build a statewide coalition. A lot of our work has been around the policy work going into the blueprint for Maryland's future that created the concentration of poverty grant program that now funds a large part of the community school strategy in Baltimore City. Yeah, the coalition is growing. We are working on becoming a little bit more formalized. We've started a new steering committee, so folks who are interested in that. We also do quarterly statewide meetings. We'll have a date for the next one coming soon. So if you go to the MOST website, there's a special page for the coalition and you can sign up for that newsletter there. and all the things that are happening in community schools will be there as well. And we'll follow up email with some of these links and also the PowerPoint, so that for those of you who are in person and not getting all the links in the chat, you will get them for sure in email. So no worries. All right, next slide, Heather. All right, so here's our quick agenda today. We're gonna do just the briefest introduction to community schools. We could spend years, I feel like, learning about it. Actually, Asani is going to New York next week to go to Community Schools Fundamentals, which is like it's a 2-day, 3-day deep dive training through the National Center for Community Schools. So if that's something that you're interested in, they run those on a fairly regular basis. So we're going to do that intro. We're going to talk a little bit about just what's unique about Baltimore and community schools. We're going to pass it off to Alex to give the role of the lead agency. We are not going to answer any questions about the city schools RFP. We promised city schools that we would not get into any of the technicalities. We will, however, offer opportunities to get additional support on the RFP if you do choose to move forward with it at a later date. And we just do have just a little bit of information about the RFP. So we want to make sure everybody knows about it, knows where they can get questions answered about it. But since it is a city schools procurement process, they wanted to make sure that we did not spread any crazy or false information. Not that we would, just, you know, they're very specific about it. So, and then we have some additional resources for you. So let's jump in. So as a result of the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, there are now a little over 300 community schools across the state of Maryland. Community schools are funded in large part by what they call the Concentration of Poverty grant in the Blueprint. That's a grant where every school that it sits at 55% or more free and reduced meal receives a personnel grant for their community school coordinator, for the health practitioner that goes along with it. And then some schools will be phased in at 56% and higher for getting additional per pupil funding to implement the community school strategy. The exact dollar amounts of those per pupil funding depends on how high the concentration of poverty is in the school. So at 80%, you're receiving a higher amount of per pupil funding than to the 56%. This has all changed everything, because in Baltimore, community schools was largely funded by the mayor's office up until this point. And so now we went from 50 schools to almost 100 schools overnight. And you'll see in the next slide, we're at 130 schools now in Baltimore. It also means that it's kind of changed the way the district's thinking about community schools. We're actually in the middle of a process by which we're going to be updating the Baltimore City Community School Policy. So this whole RFP looks completely different than the process in the past, and it is a new addition to how things are working. In Baltimore City, the lead agency model is actually unique. Across the state, most counties are implementing community schools with school district employees as the lead, as the community school coordinator. Here in Baltimore, we have a lead agency model. Actually, we have a hybrid model right now where the district is the lead agency for around 40 schools. And then the remaining schools are led by a partner lead agency, which could be a college, it could be a community-based nonprofit, it could be we have all kinds of different, it could be a faith-based organization. So there is already a diverse set of lead agencies out there, but we know that as we continue to add schools, in the district, that we're gonna need to build capacity in that. So as I mentioned, 130 schools, and this is a brand new, nobody's seen this RFP before. This is the first time of its kind, So what's a community school, you might ask? We like the Learning Policy Institute definition and 4 pillars model. I highly recommend all the Learning Policy Institute documents that around sort of the impact of community schools, the different models of implementation. So really 4 pillars is what we talk about. The first being integrated student supports, restorative practices. So that's where we're talking about what people like to say wraparound services. That's just one pillar of the community school model. The second pillar is that expanded and enriched learning time opportunities. That is really important, but it could be not just for the students in that school, but could also expand into the community and into to serve a whole variety of people. Family and community engagement. I like to put authentic family and community engagement in front of that, because this is about really making the school an open space, a hub, a real community resource. And then my favorite pillar, the pillar at the end, is this collaborative leadership and practices. And in fact, my opinion is that the lead agency model is a really critical part of this, because having to negotiate the relationship between the lead agency and the school sets you up for being partnership ready for all the other partnerships that are in the vicinity. If you can maybe help Kishan, if you can maybe help troubleshoot with her a little bit, that would be great.
I'm texting.
Oh, good. Yeah, so this is our model. This is what we talk about. And I like to stress more and more that as much as the legislators and the politicians like to talk about community schools equaling wraparound services come after you go through the process of really understanding the individualized needs of your school and building the community of practice and the open and positive culture of a community school. That's the foundation. And then all the other pieces that come in behind it then work really well. Yes.
Quick question. What was the reference point to these 4 pillars? So this infographic is what I like to call looks differently after what was the reference?
It's the Learning Policy Institute. And actually, if you Google 4 pillars LPI, this will come right up. I do it on the regular when I'm trying to cut and paste into presentations and all that stuff. Okay, and I'm moving around too much for this camera, I think, but let me, so we'll go to the next slide. Okay, we're here, Alex.
Oh, okay.
We're already here. The only thing I would say is if you have questions about the Baltimore landscape of community schools, we can certainly point you into some other resource directions. I didn't go all into the fact that there is actually kind of a triumvirate of the Baltimore City Community School Strategy, which involves Baltimore City Public Schools, the Mayor's Office, and the Family League of Baltimore City. There is still Mayor's Office dollars that go towards community schools. Those are managed and the proposals are done through the Family League of Baltimore. So that is a whole separate process. And you may, if you're not already on the Family League's list, you might want to be on them, because they do actually occasionally offer RFPs for specific schools for lead agencies. So that that strategy is still ongoing. The partnerships between all the players, Mayor's Office, school system, The dollars that are being RFP'd out here are the state dollars, the concentration of poverty grant dollars. Schools also leverage other dollars into their community school strategy that includes title dollars in community school spaces. Certainly people are leveraging 21st century community learning centers dollars in community school spaces. So there's a lot of different options for these funding models that we can go into in more depth, but I'm going to give it over to Alex. Let her give you an overview of what Elevate is doing in the community school space. And then I highly encourage just throwing all your questions at her. All right, and I'm gonna move.
I'll swap out.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm Alex, for those that don't know me. I have been doing community schools. Well, let me back up. I am a product of community schools. So I went to the very first community school in Portland, Oregon. At the time, I did not know it was a community school because that's kind of what happens with young people. Is they don't know that your school has all these support services, opportunities, and resources. And when I became a practitioner, I was like, oh, George Middle School. And they're like, oh, if we became a community school way back in the day. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but way back in the day. And so I've been connected to community schools from middle school all the way up to my adult professional life. I've been with Elevate since prior to its inception in 2009. So we launched as a strategy in 2009. I started in 2007. Elevate has grown to be part of a strategy, part of a larger organization, to be an independent Black-led organization. That is, we market and brand ourselves as a community school organization that offers a variety of programmatic opportunities to our school communities in which we partner and serve. Our mission is to ensure that every young person is prepared for high school, college, career, and beyond. And we do that through a variety of opportunities, including the center is community schools. We also are a full service out of school time program. So we do comprehensive after school program, our signature summer experience, Elevate Freedom Schools. We are the operator of the first adult high school in the state of Maryland. We do case management for adults that are struggling with housing insecurity. We also do older youth workforce development. And then we are growing to also do some tutoring, mentoring, and some other programmatic opportunities that are yet to come. So that's who we are organizationally. But what I start with that because that's what it means to be a lead agency. It doesn't mean that you are hiring a full-time coordinator, dropping them into a school that you're partnering with, and then cashing a check, sending an invoice, and walking away and having a meeting periodically with a principal. It does mean leveraging the weight of your organization to come behind a school and a community, because that's where the nuance is it's community school partnership, not school partnership, not community partnership. It really is about how I describe it is we turn walls in schools into windows so that you can see so it becomes like an in and out. It is a reciprocal relationship between a school and a community. And community for some school communities is very broad because community means a lot. I define community for those schools that we partner with as the community in which the school sits in, the school community, and then potentially the community in which our young people actually live in. So our resources and opportunities have to touch every aspect of community, particularly in school in a district of choice at middle and high school, and when you're working with charter schools, because you have young people and families that can live in all parts of the city, and your strategy as an organization cannot be just relegated to the neighborhood and the streets that border the school building. What I will say to Ellie's point is that there's a variety of funding sources that support this work. Elevate uses a braided funding strategy. We do not rely solely on any one funding source to fill out all of the complement of opportunities and services that we provide. We are, I would say, and I will continue to say, very hyper local in the work that we do. So we're very responsive to community. During pandemic, we did a lot of pivoting and adding programs that we would not have naturally added, including community-based Wi-Fi services. That's not something that's part of who we are as an organization, but who we are as an organization is responding to community needs. And that's where the lead agency model is so very special from a district-led initiative, because as lead agencies, we are working outside of the system and have the ability to be nimble. And that's where community school coordinators that are employed by school systems don't always have that ability to be as nimble. So I can, as an outside person to the school system, I can push. My role, Elevate is known, and those that know me, this is what we are known for. We push systems because we are about system change and undoing structural racism, and that requires confrontation sometimes. It requires pushing our school leader partners sometimes. It requires us to be collaborative in our leadership. It requires our school partners in which we partner with for them to be collaborative in their leadership styles as well. So there's a lot of give and take within the strategy. I would say that those that are interested in becoming a lead agency should really have a critical internal conversation with yourselves and your boards, if you have boards, or your trustees, or whomever that you all are accountable to, because it is more than just hiring somebody. It does require, at the best, it requires you to write grants. It requires you to not just say this opportunity we can provide mentoring. Here's an invoice to the school. This is what we can do for $75,000 to support 25 young people. It requires you to hire somebody who is connected to the community or who can quickly connect to a community. And that's really, really important because community school coordinators tend to be some of the most trusted individuals within the school community, because we are dealing with a school system, and not just Baltimore, right? We have an urban school system challenge in this country where trust has been broken with community. And although every parent wants the best for their young person, they may have a sour taste in their mouth with the school that they are sending their kids to because their personal experience with that school. Or they may have a sour experience with some of their older children that have gone through the school system, or they just are distrustful of systems in general because, you know, systems have historically stomped all over people of color. And this is a city of persons of color. And so we have to acknowledge that. So you have to be able to hire strategically. You have to be able to think about your salary range for that position, because these are not entry-level positions. They are positions that require some professional nuance, folks that have a strong writing ability, folks that can support facilitation of conversations. A lot of times the community school coordinators are charged with either launching a parent-teacher organization or a PTA, or they're leading school family council, depending on the school structure, right? Whatever the school structure is, it's the same difference, in my opinion. You call it school family council, you call it an OPG, you call it a PTO, it's the same structure. It is the organized parent body in which the parents, the students, your partners, and the schools work collaboratively to move the school towards their ultimate goal of making sure that they're creating the conditions and providing a high quality education for young people. So you're looking for somebody who can do all of those things. You are, quite frankly, you're looking for unicorns, and there aren't that many unicorns. And, you know, as we are looking and working with educational institutions, this is a city that has the luxury of having a high concentration of high quality institutions of learning. But what are we doing to create pathways? And how are you as an organization going to identify how you're creating a pathway? For us organizationally, we use an internal structure. So we leverage our out of school time staff. We leverage their training. We leverage pouring into them so that when we do have vacancies, we're able to lift folks up and create a workforce pipeline within youth development. Are there any questions? I don't want to just ramble on for hours and hours on end. Do we have any questions in the chat? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, go ahead.
I sent it to you. Okay, I have a couple, but can we go to the salary range, because in the RFP, they give you a minimum, you can't talk specifically about the RFP. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Wow, nationally, there's a
outside of the RFP generally.
baseline.
There's a general baseline within the field that tends to be the floor.
That seems, right, that's what I was gonna say, so
Yep.
there's a floor and a baseline, and not just one particular.
Yep.
But in a search for a unicorn.
Yep.
My wondering is, and my question is, how do you supplement that, or what do you think in the state of Maryland, especially because Maryland has urban and suburban areas?
Yep.
Is what a unicorn might like for their cost of living.
So so what I would say is that the floor that is identified in whatever document you're referring to, I would not use that. I would use that as your base, but that's a hard floor. Like that's the very, very, very bottom. You're not going to get unicorns for that price. How we organizationally do it. So every community school that Elev8 partners with has at least 3 to 4 funding streams that we independently, that we secure in addition to, let's say, if it's a school that has a concentration of poverty grant that we're able to be the community school lead partner for, then that's the foundation. Then we secure federal dollars. We secure local philanthropic dollars. We secure national dollars. We secure individual donations to be able to create the complement of services in addition to the community school coordinator's salary. And then also don't forget about the supervision of the community school coordinator. Somebody has to supervise that person. You cannot, I cannot stress this enough for those. You cannot expect your principal partner to be the sole supervisor of your employee. That will get you into all kinds of static. You will decide that this is not the strategy for you if you take that approach. Now, we use an approach of the community school coordinator has a dotted line reporting to the principal and a hard line to their Elev8 supervisor. And we work in collaboration when there's opportunities for further development, when there's opportunities for praise, when there are growth opportunities. We work in tandem to make sure that that is so that we're working lock in step with the school. So we don't work in isolation. And the principal really should feel like this is a light lift for them. That's the idea of the strategy, is to make the work lighter on the principal so that the principal can focus on being the pedagogical lead for their school. Principals do not get trained on how to run the business of schools. So this is an added value to have somebody and have an organization to provide your expertise. And then you have to think about what your qualifications are going to be for your position. So if you're going to have a requirement of a master's degree to be a community school coordinator, then you have to look at your salary range. You have to look at equity within your organization. I mean, you don't have to, but I encourage you to look at equity within your organization. This shouldn't be the position that everybody's making $100,000, but this person. There should be some equity within your organization as you are thinking about the salary range for your position. And then you also have to think about what's the full complement of their compensation package. Some vacation time, professional development, educational reimbursement opportunities. So all those things need to be taken into consideration when you're drafting that job description. And also think about it as you're writing for any opportunity, right? Because whether it's this opportunity that we're specifically speaking to today, or it's a federal grant, like you really do have to think about like, what are the areas of work that your coordinators and your organization is working on? And don't think about the traditional spaces. Like So for us, we don't always lean into educational grants. Sometimes we're looking at OJJDP grants. Sometimes we're looking at dollars that are supporting older and senior adults because of an intergenerational model Elevate has been known for since our inception. Yes. Go ahead. Yeah.
No.
I'm fine.
Okay, great, thank you.
I was going to give you the green light.
Thank you. So, in this conversation, I'm gonna go back to in the hiring part. So when you think about, the collaboration for hiring, is the principal of the school a part of your hiring team, or do you just put someone in there?
So no, we don't just place somebody. So we use a process that I think is a best practice. So we recruit, we do initial screening as an organization. We do first round interviews. I think now they do panel interviews for first round. We lift up no more than 3. Absolutely. I think 3 is like, if 3 is like, I can't decide between these 3 people. I'm going to get this third person in because I think that all of these folks are going to be good. My philosophy is I only put folks in front of a principal that I tend to be comfortable with. And then the principal interviews, and then principal provides a recommendation to the hiring manager within Elevate. And then if there is not synergy, then we go back and have a conversation. And there have been times where we have yielded to a principal and said, I've called them and I've said, listen, principal such and such, I'm going to give you what you want, but let me be on the record to say, I don't believe this is the right person. And in every circumstance, I've been doing this a very long time. So I instinctually know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And every single circumstance, principal said, yeah, you're right, this isn't going to work. And then we're trying to figure out either, is there a shift that person needs to be? Are they just not good for this work? Or are they just not good for the school community? But most of the times we are in alignment, mostly because I don't lift up folk that I'm not comfortable or that my team is not comfortable with hiring. There have been occasions where we have stepped in as a lead agency for schools that were existing community schools, and we have absorbed other folks' staff. It's hit and miss. It really just depends. Sometimes it comes from another organization's former employee having a way of being that is counter to our organizational values and how we show up. And so then that is an internal conflict. So it's not that they weren't a great coordinator or even a great youth development professional. It's just they weren't a good fit for this organization because we show up as a very specific organization. And as I imagine, many of your organizations show up as very specific, and you want to occupy both your brand and the space and the mission, value, and vision for your organization. Yeah. You can keep it coming, sis. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. You're fine. You are. This is
I was
what
going
my
to
space
ask
is.
Heather, are there any questions in the chat?
I was just gonna say whenever the room is done asking questions, I was gonna ask specifically if people want to come off and ask anything.
Sure. Come on, let it come, Heather.
Okay. If you guys have a question for Alex, just come off mute. You can also put it in the chat and I can read it out.
What I will say, as folks are thinking about questions in terms of Elevate's financial investment, and as an example of what we leverage for a school, on average, we bring slightly shy of $200,000 in leverage resources to the table. That does not count any in-kind services or in-kind partnerships that we've been able to leverage. This is just hard dollars, hard programming, things and people we have to pay. It's around that's Elevate, right? And we don't start that way for every community school. It's a continuum for us. So as a new community school, we tend to, have about $100 and some odd $1,000. And for our community schools that have been with us a long time or have a unique student population or a unique community. It can, I mean, there's a couple of school communities that we have almost $500,000 investment.
Now, do you want to say a little bit about what the process would be for you to come to a new school and like how you would go through that and what the step-by-step is?
Yeah, so for us, one, Elevate, I don't personally recruit after schools. We have a demonstrated track record, so schools will come to us. I tend to tell more schools no than I say yes to. But when I do say I'm open to the conversation, we come as our authentic selves. I come as my authentic self to that conversation. And I say, this is what we are. This is who we are as an organization. This is what we do. Here are our, plethora of reports and resources and white papers and evaluations and longitudinal studies that we have been a part of for, the 13-ish years that we've been in existence. But then I also say, who we are is we're looking for thought partnership. The ideal school for us is a principal partner who is open to, I had an idea at 3 o'clock in the morning. Are you open? The principal come back to me. Hey, Alex, I had an idea. Are you open to this kind of variance, variety to your model, to what you are doing? Because again, it's about pushing each other as leaders in order to really think about what's best for young people and what's best for community, and not always trying to put a replicated stamp in every community, because every community in Baltimore is uniquely a city of neighborhoods and communities. And as an organization that believes in the hyper locality of this strategy, it does require that some neighborhoods look different in terms of intervention. Some opportunities lean heavily in other neighborhoods than others. Some opportunities lean heavily into a certain grade band than others. Organizationally, we draw our lines at certain things. We don't do littles at all. There are a variety of organizations that do amazing work with early learners up to pre-K, first grade. That ain't Elevate. And I do not believe in mission creep. And I encourage you, as you are thinking about this opportunity, to not think of, to grow slowly and to not mission creep just off the break, because you're like, this is going to be great. We can do early learning. We can do adult housing. We can do transportation. We can build a grocery store. We can do all of those things. And yes, you can, in partnership with the community. And that work is slow. And that doesn't always mean that you are doing that work. Sometimes that means that you are being the conduit for additional partnerships. You're the gatekeeper. And sometimes as an organization, you're the safeguard for your coordinator too, because also principals are tapped with lack of resources. And so they'll say, hey, coordinator, can you hold this class for me? Time out. Coordinators don't hold classes. They're not instructors. That's not what they do. Can they pitch in? Absolutely. Can they hold class? Can they sub? Absolutely not. But that's an Elevate line. It doesn't mean that every organization holds that line true. And we come in as the organization and say, we love you, we got you, but this person cannot do this. I can advocate for you. I can try to find, we can work to create a sub pool just for you, so that you have a pot of people who want to do this work and who can be in the sub pool, which is benefit to the entire system, not just to you as a school. So that's for us, how we have those conversations. And I'm very transparent with principals on the front end when we're having those conversations. And I'm also transparent with them around what I'm not going to do as an organization is, if we have an opportunity, I'm not going to give you a bill for every single thing. Sometimes I will have to say, I can't leverage what you want right now. And sometimes schools have to pay for certain things. And then sometimes it flows out. So a school may be paying for tutoring right now. But if I get a huge federal grant, I don't necessarily need a double dip unless I'm talking about adding more young people to tutoring. But I tend to be of the philosophy that I try to not, organizationally, more isn't always better because it's sometimes unwieldy. Sometimes it is better to have partners with different lenses on the work, doing work that is aligned. That's the strategy. We are all working towards a common goal. Yeah.
I was just gonna speak to your fact about trying to do so many things.
Yeah.
And I withheld like my experiences with community schools for a reason, but we can talk offline.
Yeah.
But I do see a lot of just people wanting to chase crumbs and like do like a very small quality of things just to be able to accomplish many of them.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that Elevate says, hey, we are the older youth. We are, you know, early learning is not us.
Yeah.
Because you can easily add that to your mission and be another action item, but then it tends to take away from, you know, the true mission that you set out to do. And then I like what you also talked about, just leverage. That is the key here. Like just understanding, first do an inventory of what exists already, because you may not have to create something all over again. And then seeing what's out there, and then we didn't talk much about it, but just knowing what the needs are, because we'll show up and we'll give people what we think they need. But where does the data support that? And so part of my program, we have tutoring services, and I meet with parents all the time. My child needs tutoring, my child needs tutoring. I said, where's the data to support that? Just because you have struggled with helping your child at home doesn't mean we're going to throw this intervention at them. So we can schedule an assessment. I can look over data from the school, and then we can make a decision on whether that is truly a need for your child. So I say that to say, in a lot of urban places, people want to throw these things at schools and more programs, and this is what you need and all of this stuff. And it's just like, but you have to support it with data, and you just have to really not barge in with that, because people already have their community set. They already have these, you know, these things they're rich in. So you don't want to interrupt that with just making your own biases or, you know, just whatever, you know, just get that like, oh, you know, you have dirty clothes, so you need clothes, when that may not be the case. So,
Alex, do you want to talk a little bit about the needs assessment?
Yeah.
process, and then also how you get data?
So the needs assessment is a large undertaking, and it can be unwieldy for a coordinator. What I will say is that there's a lot of data that is existing that I encourage folks to, as they are doing needs assessments, to leverage existing needs assessments, leverage existing opportunities. What we don't want the strategy to be known for, or at least I don't want the strategy to be known for, is another data collection opportunity for poor and under-resourced communities. We really want it to be strategic. But it is a lift, because we're talking about engaging stakeholders, partners, community, students, parents, teachers, school leaders, vendors, because not every organization in the school is a partner. Some are vendors, and you have to be able to understand the difference between a partner and a vendor. And some are perfect, and it's good. If you know as a vendor, cool. We have a vendor relationship. If you are a partner, that means we are in this work together, and we have a reciprocal relationship. And the school should have a reciprocal relationship with them. It shouldn't be just, what you doing? What's going on? Where you at? What you doing? It does, I believe right now the needs assessment frequency is, I think, 2 to 3 years. We used to organizationally do something that was a little bit different. Because there was just too many needs assessments happening, we've kind of yielded from that, and then do almost like an interim validation. But it's internal to us. It's not something that we're bringing in a lot of, actually doing a lot of paperwork or surveys or anything like that. But we do a lot of, we do give young people a lot of opportunity for voice, just because how we're structured organizationally. The needs assessment then leads into the action plan. And that is kind of your coordinator's scope of work. That action plan is their roadmap to their work, but it should never feel like it is a stagnant document. It should always feel like a living, breathing document that is responsive to the emerging needs of the school community. So during COVID, a lot of folks' needs assessments, none of them said Wi-Fi. None of them said computers, but folks pivoted. And it doesn't mean that you throw away your needs assessment. It's your action plan. You rethink what the emerging need is and how it fits into the area of work, the domain. You really have to think strategically. And that's where having a lead agency is helpful for a coordinator, because they're not sitting on an island by themselves, trying to make this happen by themselves. They have an organization. So for us, some of our action plans have bodies of work that the coordinator is not responsible for, doesn't touch, very rarely even engages with, particularly our adult high school work. So if adult education and workforce development is on the school's needs assessment, check. We have a whole division within the organization that does that work, but it shows up on the needs assessment because the weight of this organization is behind the school, not just the coordinator.
Now, back to the needs assessment.
Yeah.
Because I've seen the process.
Yep.
Look different with different schools. I've seen paper data collection.
Yep.
I've seen very comprehensive database systems.
Yep.
And I will give families their flowers. They have a really good database system for their needs assessment. Just in my experiences with them. So how does that look for the lead agency? Is that something that the new lead agency has to present to them, like how they plan to conduct their needs assessment? Will there be resources around that to support?
Good, that's a good question. So the needs assessment process is now outlined by the state. And so LEA, the school system, has a process that they give to you as a lead agency, and you follow that process. It doesn't mean that you can't add to that process, but you have to at minimum do this because it is legislatively required. So you do that. Paper versus online. I know that the system is leaning towards doing more things online using QR codes and whatnot to avoid the requirement of somebody having to do data entry. Now, I still believe that there's a space for paper because some folk just respond better to paper. But then as an organization, who's going to do that data entry? Is it your coordinator? Are you going to leverage volunteers? Do you have an admin within your organization that could help just do the earphones, type it in? But you have to think about that, how that works. And then you're also thinking about the littlest of the young people, particularly when you're doing community school visioning. If you're working with an elementary school or an elementary middle school, don't overlook your kindergartners or your first graders, your pre-Kers. Don't overlook your Judy centers, because those young people have thoughts. They can't write those thoughts out, but they have thoughts on what a school looks like to them. And you have to, nuance your language. What does a school look like to you? School looks like hearts and flowers and fun and friends and it's pictures. It's not words. Sometimes it's conversations. Sometimes it's role playing. There are ways to get that buy-in and get that input without actually filling out a survey. And those are the supplemental pieces that you want to do when you're doing a needs assessment. But in terms of extra resources, I'm gonna go with a hard no. Now, it doesn't mean that the district won't make that happen down the road, but that hasn't been my experience to date, that additional resources will come. Organizationally, we tend to identify how we can provide additional resources and supports to our staff that are undergoing a needs assessment process. But that's how we show up for our team and how we show up for our schools, because we are very specific around how we like data to show up, because it goes into our stuff as well. We just don't turn everything over into the school system. We have our own database. A lot of organizations that are a little bit larger have their own database. I know the Y has their own database. I think Child First has their own database. But we keep our own information because we are the owners of that information when it's in our database. If I give everything over to city schools, I give everything over to Family League, I give everything over to Weinberg, I give everything over to such and such foundation or MSDE, when they decide that they don't want to grant me access to something that is historical for Elevate, where's my data? Where am I gonna then tell the feds that we have 10, 15, 20 years of data warehoused? So you have to think about, like, what does that look like for you? And then what does it look like to do that ethically? And what safeguards do you have organizationally in place to be able to manage data? Because we are talking about students, sometimes we're talking about student records. And so you have to manage that in an ethical and legal standpoint.
There's a question. Heather, is there a question?
Yeah, we have a question in the chat from Marcetta. She's got two. I'm gonna ask both of them. One is the evaluation process built into the lead agency concept? I think you've talked a little bit about that. If you want to talk some more on that. And then is there a memorandum of understanding for the lead agencies and the partners that you have?
We have a memorandum of understanding for our partners. We keep our own external evaluation team as an organizational value. So I pay an external evaluation partner every year to do our external evaluation, because that's what we do as an organization. An external evaluation is not required by city schools or Family League at this point. I know that OAA is working to create some like metrics around evaluation of the strategy, but that doesn't necessarily come out of your money or your like work. They're just looking at the data that you're giving them, that's how they're evaluating that work. But I do encourage you to think about, what is your value around quality, and how are you going to, how do you measure what you're doing as an organization? Are you going to participate? Or are you going to do a process evaluation for community schools? Are you going to do an outcomes evaluation for community schools? How are you going to source that information? Are you going to work with Hopkins, Morgan, Loyola and bring in some of those students to help you navigate that space? How are you going to evaluate the work that you do with parents?
I'll mention that from the quality implementation side, there is a rubric. There's multiple rubrics, but there's one that was specifically done for the Baltimore strategy.
Yeah.
And OAA then adapted that to do some of the work they're doing in terms of data collection. So I will link that rubric in the documents that we shared. It was developed by Mavis Sanders along with some other folks. Mavis is has been a long time researcher in the community school space, and then there were other practitioners that worked with her on that rubric. So might be a nice starting point to look at, just in terms of like, oh, well, how would I take a look at, where we are in a spectrum in terms of the quality of implementation of community schools.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we have an external evaluation team, Elevate has a logic model. I wouldn't say that every community school lead agency and remember, we've been doing this for a very long time. So I'm not suggesting that every new lead agency needs to have an external evaluator, needs to have a logic model, needs to, do a qualitative analysis of everything that you do. But I'm saying that this is a continuum of work, and, you have to think about what is your value organizationally around how are you going to move this work and grow in this work organizationally. What was the other part of the question, Heather? I'm sorry.
The other part of the question was about memorandums of understanding for lead agencies and the partners.
Yep. So we have a memorandum of understanding through our contract with city schools that gives us some access to student level data. If you as an organization believe that you need a different level of access, then you are going to have to go through a data sharing agreement with the school system. That is a completely different process. I am not going to talk about access to Infinite Campus, whether or not folks have it, don't have it. I'm not gonna go there. What I'm saying is that if you believe as an organization, as a part of your community school strategy, that you believe additional level of access to information is needed for your programming and your interventions, then you have to go through that opportunity, to do that work. We've had IRBs with the district. We've had our internal data sharing agreements, but we also have memorandums of understanding with all of our partners, whether we pay a partner or not. We always ensure that there's a memorandum of understanding, and we always, if there is a data sharing requirement between us as an organization, we do manage that, and we always ensure that our evaluation team is part of those conversations to ensure that we're not overlooking something.
And Alex, the MOU with your school partners covers more than the data sharing, right?
It covers all expectations of our partnership. It covers what, if we're paying them, it covers what that pay scale looks like. It covers requirements around background checks, and it covers everything from audits to alignment, to requirements around meetings. We try to put not everything, but as much as of everything into an MOU so that we are clear around our expectations, and that they're clear what they can expect from us. So the other part of our MOU includes what Elev8 is going to provide to them. So it's not just what you're going to give to us, it's what we're going to give to you to make your work easier in the school. So that is, we are going to host monthly coordination meetings. We are going to provide a manager lead as a point of contact. We are going to provide technical assistance around billing. But these are things that we do as an organization because we're trying to build up a subset of organizations that can take on some of the work that we're paying for or that we resource out. So one of the things that we work hard with our partners is their first entry to Elev8, we may be paying them. But then we work to figure out if there's a grant opportunity, are we the best applicant or are you the best applicant? And if you're the best applicant, can we make sure that it will support you in the application writing? And I do it with a lot of organizations. I help a lot of organizations with technical assistance around grant writing. But part of that give of my time is that you are going to reduce the cost that Elev8 carries on your behalf.
I'm just gonna flag that we're at 1:35.
Okay.
And I don't know what your availability is out.
Yep.
Everybody else, want to make sure, if there's like, one or two more questions that we have.
Yeah, I think there might be one more in the chat, maybe, Heather.
I
You're
did
good here.
want to say that we do have a slide somewhere that just has the date that the RFP is due, the contact information for the RFP person. I'm sure you've all seen all that. We did want to say that if you do have technical questions about the RFP, they really should go directly to that procurement officer,
Yep.
Katie, and yeah. And we want to do just a real stress that this is a bit of a technical application.
Yes.
Particularly the a minority women business part of the application is very technical. We just want everybody to just really pay attention to each step of that application and do all your I's and dotting and T's crossing, because it will get thrown out on
Yep.
a technicality if it is not done exactly how procurement wants it to be done.
Yep.
And Alex has had her experiences with this. But I can't stress enough that this is, the foundations are so much more flexible, and they're like, oh yeah, you can give me a new budget, you can do whatever. No, this is very,
Yes.
this is bureaucrats looking at paperwork saying yes, no, yes, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Read the application to the letter. If you feel like it's redundant, just write it redundantly, because there's not rhyme or reason, in my opinion, around why tends to be redundancy in certain sections. But I've done it, and folks at the state love an Elev8 application because we write it exactly how they ask us to write it, and try not to add extra. Don't add fluff. Fluff just confuses them. Just the facts, ma'am, sir, just the facts. I'm sorry, Heather, there was another question in the chat?
No, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. No, you're fine.
I want to go back to something that you stated earlier about not charging schools for everything.
Mhm.
So when you are partnering, when Elevate is partnering with the school, what are core services versus supplemental or services that you charge for? So what do I get in an Elevate pack partnership? And then what do I have to pay for?
So organizationally, we don't charge schools for any after-school program or summer program. This summer, we ran Freedom Schools for 350 students. Yeah, 350 students-ish. On average, we have, I think this year we have 7 after-school programs. Each of those after-school programs have about 50 to 60 young people in each program location. Our high school programs, after-school program, we provide stipends and daily transportation home. Schools pay for none of those things. Sometimes central office, because we do have an active PQS with the district for professional services agreement with the school system for extended learning, which includes tutoring and mentoring. Sometimes the school system will purchase Elevate opportunities on behalf of the school, but we very rarely pull on school level budgets for anything. Now, a school may say, I want a hiking club, or I want a backpacking club. We don't have that, but if they ever did, we would say, great, you're happy to do it. We're happy to incorporate it, but that requires a whole lot of supplies that we don't have a supply budget for. And the school will say, great, I'll kick in $20,000. A lot of our grants require a cash match. So Family League requires I think a $20,000, $30,000 cash match at this point. Prior to the concentration of poverty grant dollars, Elevate shouldered anything above that. Well, I'm sorry, that cash match was never charged to the schools. So community schools, we don't charge directly to schools' budgets, anything above. Adult learning, workforce development, we independently resource. I'm trying to think of something we charge schools for. It's really, for us, it's when schools ask us for something. Now, it doesn't mean a brand new school will get a full-fledged after-school program because I have to resource develop for it. So, and most schools can't afford what an Elevate after-school program costs because we're not cheap, which is why I choose to never charge a school for it, because they can't afford it anyways. So why play the money games, and why play the, we're not going to play games with each other.
I will say that some schools starting now may have additional dollars to play with because of the additional per pupil funding coming in through the.
Yes. And there's been new guidance that's come down to schools around additional extended learning dollars that have to be encumbered this year, but they have to be ESSER approved interventions. So if you are an ESSER approved strategy or your intervention are ESSER approved, then perhaps the school can purchase other services with you all. Or if you have something that the school is just like, I just really love fill in the blank opportunity, that's great. But this is our experience, not necessarily everybody's experience.
If you want more information about what it means to become ESSA approved, we actually did a 4-part series on that that we have all the recordings for still. So it's basically having a certain research level and city schools seems to be one of the few districts that really enforces this in a very strict way. But yeah, we have a great series on that, and we can share those. I'll make sure we share those links too.
Yep. Any other comments, questions, concerns, thoughts? I'm happy to be around. Honestly, for those that are on the call, if you would like to ask me questions that are germane to the application, please know that I'm happy to give them, but they are my personal experiences, my personal opinion. Alex Warwick Addams, I am not an agent of the school system. I am not affiliated with this RFP process. I'm happy to give you my experience, my guidance as a professional that's been doing this work. It is cannot be taken as letter of the law. If I get it wrong, if I tell you something wrong, that means I got it wrong too. And I'm happy to, you know, just answer any questions offline with those as well.
You wanna, say your email address and then Heather will type it in the chat?
No,
Heather,
I don't
just
want to
drop
say
it
my
in.
email address. No, my email address is Addams, AADAMS at elevate, the number 8 Baltimore.org. You are welcome to call me also. My cell phone number is area code 503-410-1882. Don't try to leave me a voicemail. I keep my voicemail full on purpose. You are welcome to send me a text message and I will be happy to call you back or respond via text. 1882 503-410-1882. Addams at elevate-baltimore.org. And then I guess I'm gonna give it back to you, Ellie.
All right. Well, I don't have much more to say. You can maybe stick our info slide back up, Heather. We hope you will join our newsletter for the coalition and for MOST. This is lights on after school week. So everybody celebrate after school in your own way. Maybe do the light bulb challenge on social media or have some fun with that. One other plug I will make we are getting ready to host in person the Maryland United for Youth Conference. This is an amazing event. It is done in partnership with our sister organization, Mentor Maryland DC. It is November 17th and 18th at the Annapolis Crown Plaza. We're expecting about 300 youth development professionals from around the state to convene. We're going to have some very exciting presentations, and it's definitely something that crosses over from OST, mentoring, community schools. All of the kind of presentations will be relevant to any kind of educator, any kind of person working with young people. So I'm working. I can't say all the exciting people. We're nailing down some very, very exciting guests. So and there will also youth can attend the conference free. Anyone under the age of 21 and under. We open that to folks. Heather's dropping the conference info in there, and it'll also be in that email that we follow up with. So yeah, youth are free. Youth are free. So I think that's it. Yeah. And please take extra sandwiches on the way out so that we don't, anybody wants extra, please take extra. I don't want to take them home with me. So. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Awesome sauce. Now, what do you want to ask me offline?
Okay, everybody, I am going to close out this Zoom. Like Ellie said, we will be sending out all this information in an email afterwards. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yes.